Okay, let's talk about NDI tools real quick and just do a brief overview. If you want me to focus on something as I'm talking over each of the ones that I think are important and the ones that I understand, put a comment in the chat and I can talk a little bit more, or I can answer specific questions. Totally fine with that. This is purely a sharing of information, and yeah, we'll walk through that together. But I want you to know about a free toolkit that's out there, and quite honestly, I think that NDI, the company, this is like unsung hero stuff, okay? Because the tools that are involved, that they have available for free, mind you, you don't have to, you don't have to pay for them. They're just available for free, and they're super helpful. You can put them on any machine that you want. The only thing is that you have to give away your firstborn to get the code to download them. No, I'm kidding. You have to register, and then you're allowed to download them. My suggestion is register, download them, but save that executable or the DMG file, depending on which one you're using. I will tell you now, the PC version of these tools is much more robust than the Mac version. If you're looking for a Mac version, head over to Sienna Tools or Sienna.tv and look at their tool offering, because that's a great little that's a great little toolkit to have. But check out the Sienna.tv website if you're looking for NDI tools for Mac, and then NDI.tv/tools if you're looking for them for PC, because they're quite robust on the PC from NDI. Okay. Whoops. Let's try that again. All right. So over here is my NDI toolkit. When you download them, they have this cool little launcher now that shows you basically all of them with the exception of two. But these are like the main tools in your toolkit that you can use to kind of troubleshoot things or get things up and running, or try NDI if you want to just try it out and see what it's like. This is a great little free little toolkit that can be your entry level into NDI. And forgive me here, I'm looking off to the side because my screen's over here still. So the first and foremost, the thing that I'm using, for example, is NDI Webcam. NDI Webcam basically takes an NDI source and turns it into a USB style input on your machine. So if you open that, you can then capture any NDI source on your network and turn it into a usable USB source. So you can bring it into Teams or Zoom, or in my instance, StreamYard or something like that. Super easy. You open that up, and then the bottom little corner where your sys tray is, you open up it'll appear in the sys tray. You can click on it, select which NDI source you want, which NDI audio source you want, and then you can pipe those in to whatever program that you're using. I use that at home. I use it here. I use it in my office. I use it in a bunch of places. And so really handy if you have a camera that's generating NDI that you want to use as a webcam, or you want to use it for a webcam function, point in case StreamYard. I'm taking the NDI source out of vMix. Okay, so I have the fourth output is outputting NDI, and I bring it onto my network as an NDI source. And then I use the PC version of this, and I run webcam on, I use the Mac version of this, and I convert it to a USB source on my Mac here in the studio, and then I stream that up to StreamYard as my USB input. So that's how I'm using webcam. Really handy, super simple to have, and high quality. Studio Monitor. If you've been in the NDI game at all, you know what Studio Monitor is, but essentially Studio Monitor is the way that we view and test NDI sources on our network. So if we fire NDI Studio Monitor and we open that up, we're going to get a little program that looks like this. This is NDI Studio Monitor. And Studio Monitor, if you right click anywhere in the window, I know it says like click on that. Oh, whoops. It says like click on the hamburger. Okay, well, if you click on the hamburger, we'll get to test patterns in a minute. You click on the hamburger, that's fine, but you can right click anywhere in this, okay? And it'll bring up all your sources. So you right click, and then look, I've got all my NDI sources here on my NDI network that all appear in this list. And so there's a whole bunch of things going on in this office that we can check out. But of course, the P4K is the main camera right here, and that is that source. There's inside Studio Monitor, there's a great little tool as well. Like maybe I just want to check the source and make sure that it's positioned correctly, because you can steer this camera right here with the onboard PTZ controls. So we can steer that. I could maybe line this up a little better. So you can drive it around. You can call presets. You can store presets. You can change the autofocus to manual. You can zoom in and out if you want. So if you want to make it a little closer, a little further away, all the options are in here to kind of set up your camera, get the presets set, do the things. All right, but then this connection, if it's full NDI, is going to be taking 140 megs, or if it's in 4K, it's going to be taking 200 megs just to show that inside Studio Monitor. So I don't really want to do that. I just want to position it correctly and make sure I can see it on this network. So you can go to settings, you can say video, and then select low bandwidth. Low bandwidth basically changes this to the proxy stream that's also coming out of my camera. So I want to change it to proxy. I select low bandwidth, and now I have the low bandwidth version of this, and my computer isn't going to have to work twice as hard just to show something that, just to set it up and get it angled correctly. So if you right-click inside Studio Monitor, there you go. That gives you all the quick little access to all of your NDI sources on your network that are visible to your group or on your Discovery server and what have you. There's a couple of beta options in here, like the connection reliability. That's what this little bar is at the bottom of the Studio Monitor. I don't find it to be actually accurate. And so you can see there the video thing keeps I don't know if that's drop frames. I don't know if that's just stability, if it's just the computer decoding fast enough. I don't know if that's an NDI Tools readout in terms of the tool's performance or the camera's performance or the network's performance. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But it is a beta feature at best. And so I'm just going to turn that off because it's kind of annoying and deceiving because I don't have any drop frames on this P400 or P4K, sorry. So there you go. Okay, so Studio Monitor, and I'm just going to double check here and take a look at this. So Daniel has a great question. So I'm actually not running the latest version of Tools on this computer. This is the 5.5.3, I believe, on here, but they have recently updated and this is 5.5.0, okay? The latest is 5.5.4, and that happened right around before NAB, and the icons now look different. Okay, so I won't comment on the icons because I think enough has been said about that, but the icons now look different to work more with their marketing ideas, and so they aren't going to have these different colors. They're going to have icons with symbols, but don't worry, if the symbols don't really make a lot of sense, the names are still available. So we're gonna reference the names and not the colors of the symbols. Okay, so screen capture. Screen capture is actually a program I'm currently using on this machine to show you this output. So you're looking at a screen capture of a secondary monitor that I have that then comes in as NDI. Okay, so back it up. Screen capture generates an NDI source from your screen. Okay, you turn it on, and out of the box, it takes the resolution of your monitor, okay, of your screen output, and makes that an NDI source. And we can find that actually inside Studio Monitor. So if we open Studio Monitor again, and we say none, okay, so on my machine, this is called a vMix machine, and here I have these Radeon RX VEGA MGL Graphics 1 and Graphics 2. Those are my screens that are being generated into NDI. And so screen 2 should be this one. And look at that. It is a repeat of a repeat of a repeat of a repeat. That's what NDI screen capture is. And you can do one more thing inside screen capture, which I found out recently, is that you can select on the video output to also include the mouse. So if you want your audience, for example, if you're doing screen capture and you want your audience to see the mouse, you have to tell it inside screen capture to do that. But then, if you're saying, okay, well, now click on the maximize button. Whoa, that's crazy. And you want people to see you doing that, you have to tell NDI to also capture the mouse input. So I'll do that here because that's helpful for you guys here to see what we're doing. But screen capture has a few little options where you can, and I'll just talk you through them because I can't really show you the sys tray on that screen. But there are some options. You can change the frame rate to use the monitor frame rate to do 60p, 5994p, or 50p, which is a PAL rating. But do 60, 5994, or 50 for you over in Europe to match perhaps your production suite. So if all my cameras are running in 5994 and I want screen capture to also run in 5994, you can set it that way to do that. Or you can set it as 30p, 2997, or 25p. All right, and it will then output the captured screen at that refresh rate to match the rest of your suite. Or if you don't care, you can just say match the monitor's refresh rate. Now be careful, because if you have gaming screens, they're going to run at maybe 75 hertz or 120 hertz or 144 hertz or 240 hertz. And that is not going to be super compatible with the rest of your NDI infrastructure, which is why they give you the option, I think, to do that. You can also configure a region of interest. It's called an ROI, and it basically just shows only a portion of your screen. That does work when you're bringing it into vMix, but it doesn't work when you're trying to decode that source on a BirdDog decoder, for example, because we're looking for SMPTE resolutions. So you're going to want to stick to something that's 1080, 2160, something like that if you're trying to output that on an NDI decoder from source, from screen capture to decoder. You're going to want to have that as 1080 or 2160, or you're going to want that as 720 or something like that. You're not going to want to do a region of interest at like some wonky resolution and then try and push that to a decoder, because the decoder is not going to be able to see it. So be careful when you're doing region of interest that it needs to be a SMPTE resolution if you're going directly to a decoder. You can change the audio source. So right now my screen capture has no audio source, but I could change it to system audio, for example. If I want to show you a YouTube video, I could change it to system audio, and then the audio source that comes in on the desktop screen capture, this that you're looking at right now, that would be whatever it is that I tell the audio source it needs to be. I could also change it to be like my microphone input, or I could change it to be a VLC output or something like that, an audio input that's on your computer. You could link it to that and create that as the audio side and the video side of that NDI source. And then we've already talked about that. Now you can also enable KVM on the screen capture, which means that if I open NDI Studio Monitor on another computer in my office, I could control the computer through KVM. So I have a keyboard and a mouse, basically, when I'm interacting with the NDI source. And maybe we could show that inside of, let's see here, screen capture. And I want to do graphic 2. Okay, so then KVM becomes an option. We can click on KVM, and now we can control it inside of Studio Monitor. Be careful, because you're going to get locked in here with some of that. Okay, so we want to probably close Studio Monitor, because you're going to get locked into that screen if you're using KVM. If you don't know what KVM is, it's basically a way to remote into the computer using NDI. Okay, which is a really neat way to manage multiple computers, is by just running screen capture with KVM enabled. And now when you look at it in Studio Monitor, you can control all those virtual machines over NDI, which is kind of slick. Anyways, screen capture gives you that ability. Be sure that you're authorized to use KVM in your installation, that it doesn't breach some sort of IT permission, because you can get a lot of trouble if you start enabling that across your network, and IT doesn't approve that sort of stuff. So be warned, be sure that you have permission, or that you're like the admin for that, because I don't want you to get in trouble. Okay, so one of the great questions from NetHab is, what if they're gaming in 144 hertz? Well, if you're gaming at 144 hertz, you're going to want to dumb it down to 60 through screen capture if you're using it as confidence monitors or something like that, because we do not encode at 144 hertz on any of our devices in any of our fleets anywhere. So 144, you have to run screen capture in 60, or maybe if that's the case, run it in 30, because you want to lower the CPU usage of the computer, and 30 would be less than 60 technically. Okay. So that is screen capture. Now, test patterns is so cool, because test patterns allows you to generate an NDI source on your network that can be various. Oh, where are we here? Test patterns is still loading. So test patterns allows you basically to generate an NDI source at a certain output and allow you then to test your decoders or your ability to send NDI across the network, including audio. So it gives you the option to, I do not know why test patterns is not opening. So it does allow you to generate NDI and generate audio. What's going on here? That's not good. Test patterns won't open. Well, I want to showcase this, but won't do it. Still having some issues with the spice. Test patterns basically, but it does allow you to generate an actual NDI output. Now be careful with test patterns, because unless you're using a video, which you can create your own test patterns inside the program, if you're using a static screen, it's just going to be a single frame until you change the frame. So it's not really going to be testing 1080p 60. It's going to be testing 1080p 1. Okay? So you can upload your own pictures. You can also use test patterns to generate an NDI source with your logo on it, and then have that as your fallback source on your BirdDog devices. So when the source disappears, it goes to the test pattern, which is running on a server somewhere on your NDI network, and that be your fallback source, which is your company logo or your school's logo or motto or whatever you want to do. So you can customize it and leave it running at all times. So then you just add test patterns into the startup menu and you leave that on as that's the test pattern you want to use. And then you have a fallback source, which when your IT department sees that symbol, it means that NDI source is not being connected, or, it's currently not decoding. So if I shut off vMix, for example, my NDI devices that are showing this, BirdDog Play in this instance, could fall back to a test pattern that's running in a different room. It could fall back to that. And then when I walk in and I see the TV and it's got my logo up there, I think, okay, the main source is not being decoded. That's a test pattern. So it's a nice way to know, but also keep it nice and clean so that those who are looking at those TVs or decoders don't see like an error message or the BirdDog logo or something like that. So that's an easy way to do that. So test pattern is great. It's a great way to test things. Fourth hence the name. Fourth hence? Is that right? I don't think that's right. Access Manager. Access Manager is going to require you to give it admin credentials, but Access Manager is one of those unsung programs that we really need to talk through. Now, I've done overviews on Access Manager before in previous shows, but I'll try and give you a general rundown just so that it's available in this video if you're watching this post-show. Groups are what we do when we want to group NDI sources together, kind of like in a softbox situation. So not a lighting softbox, but like we want to put sources in a bin together, and we don't want them to interact with other NDI sources. Well, you'd add them as groups. And if you need to add a computer to that group, you would do that here in Access Manager. So the receive group is basically a group that sources coming into the computer, and then the actual send group is sources that this computer belongs to. Groups that this computer belongs to in the NDI world. So I belong to the public group, which basically means anyone on my NDI network can see the outputs that my computer is generating. Public is default in the NDI world, and so it's automatically you're in the public group unless you specify otherwise. When you add a group to a receive group, you also need to keep the public group in here. If you replace the public group with, say, Studio 2901, which is used to be what all my devices in this studio belong to, that group. If you remove the public group, the sources on your computer will not broadcast to the other devices that don't belong to a NDI group. Okay? So by default, they all belong to the public group until you change it, and then they don't belong to the public group. And then you have to specify, no, I want to still receive the public group NDI sources outside of the Studio 2901 sources. Okay? I don't know if that makes any sense. All right. I'm going to scroll down here to, okay, that's just groups on that first page. External sources is if you are doing multiple subnets. Now, we talked about subnets last week. And if you're running a network that is like 255.255.255.192 or whatever it is that you want to change it to be like a WAC 16, and you're going to have multiple subnets on the same network, this is where you would specify that you want the computer to look on other subnets for sources. And you have to do that specifically. You have to say, all right, scan my subnet, scan my 192.168.1 network, but also add these ones to the list of items to scan, because you should have sources at these locations on the additional subnets. Subnets, now, I always say this right at this point, subnets are different than VLANs. If you have a different VLAN, that's not a different subnet. It is, but it's not the same as what this function is for. This is for talking across subnets that are in the same VLAN, okay? That's what external groups is for. Now, if you're having trouble, for example, finding a specific source that's in your same, your 22255 subnet, try adding it here to the external sources. So my computer is 192.168.1.45, but I'm having trouble finding a source that I know is at 1.75. I could punch it in here, reopen Studio Monitor, and see if I could see that source. Maybe there's a discovery issue. Maybe Bonjour is blocked. Maybe MDNS isn't working right. Maybe I have an error on my DHCP. Maybe there's a unmanaged switch somewhere that's wigging out, or that is just unmanaged and you shouldn't have that on there. Maybe we have to specify. If you put it on this list, you might find it, and then you can figure out, why didn't the network naturally tell me or announce that this device was here? But you can manually add it here. And all you do there is you hit the plus button, you say it's an NDI source name, you put in the IP address 1.75, and then you can even name it. So if you want it to show up as a different name, you can do that. But I guess not in this instance. And then we can hit OK. It'll add it to the list as an NDI source. And then when I open Studio Monitor, okay, so you have to open Studio Monitor to re-trigger the announcement command. And you reopen Studio Monitor, it will say, hey, everybody, give me your information, and everybody will respond. And then it will specifically go after 1.75 and say, hey, you are supposed to have a source here. Are you there? And it should show up in Studio Monitor if the source is working correctly or if the network is configured correctly. And then you can simply just get rid of those if you need to by clicking the X. Okay, Advanced tab. This is where all the fun stuff is, in my opinion. Okay, so you can tell Access Manager what the preferred protocol is on your network by telling it under the Receive tab. I want to receive, preferably, packets that are RUDP. It does not mean exclusive. All right, it doesn't reject multicast packets. It doesn't reject TCP packets. It doesn't do that. My network preferred is RUDP, and so that's where it will camp out first. We actually recommend that if you're running a mix, here's a pro tip for you. If you're running a mix of NDI 5 and NDI 4, specify right here. Specify on the machine that you're doing the NDI switching on, specify what it's supposed to be. Reliable UDP, is it supposed to be TCP? Is it supposed to be multi-TCP? Well, what is the deal? So specify what type of packets that you're supposed to be getting on the network if you're running a mix of NDI 4 and NDI 5, which I am. This is where we put in our multicast information. And a lot of people don't get into the customization of multicast. They just use the out-of-box multicast settings. And if you're running, in particular, a 4250, another pro tip, just checking this box and saying, I have multicast on my network, it'll say, hey, be careful. You need to know what you're doing here. Just checking this box and leaving these as default is the configuration for the 4250. So Netgear went one step further for you and made it super simple. If you're running the NDI 5 profile on the 4250 switch, okay, the NDI 5 with Dante, blah, 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 blah. If you're running that, you're enabled for multicast because the snooping's already set up. Multicast packet, the query is already set up. All that stuff's already done. Levent's already, or not Levent. Who's the lead engineer over there? Anyways, Netgear, Pro AV Design at netgear.com have already done this for you. And so when you check that box, that's all you need to do. And then you would hit OK, and that would enable multicast on your NDI libraries, which is what we're editing. That's what Access Manager is here, okay? We're editing the NDI library database to know how to interact with your network. That's what Access Manager is. So if you check that and you hit OK, it will enable the NDI style or the multicast portion of the NDI realm. Okay, which I am running multicast on this network. Network mapping. This is kind of like, this is interesting. Interesting stuff. Let's put it that way. There's a couple of fun things in here and one thing that is kind of like, okay. The first is if you're running Discovery Server and you need this computer that you're using to know that you're using Discovery Server, you would check Discovery Server, and then you'd put in, your 192.168, 1.45. If this is the computer that's running Discovery Server, I'd punch in 1.45 and I would hit OK. And it would add that to the NDI database on this computer inside NDI Tools to tell, like Studio Monitor, and to tell, the other services that are running Bridge and all that, to tell them, hey, we've got a Discovery Server on here. So Studio Monitor is actually going to open up and still send out a broadcast and be like, hey, anybody out there that's not talking multicast? But then it's also going to go to the multicast side of things and say, also, Discovery Server, give me the list. And Discovery Server will then turn around and give it a list. So the nature of NDI, I'm sorry here, let me go down here real quick. Okay. So the nature of NDI Tools is it checks as much stuff as possible. It doesn't necessarily behave, as far as I know. It doesn't exclusively only check Discovery Server when you put this in here in Access Manager. When you open Studio Monitor, it should check all available sources, but it also knows there are units that are not broadcasting that will be talking to Discovery Server. Hey, Discovery Server, give me that list. That's what it's going to say. Okay. So put in your Discovery Server here. Now, NDI 5 enables you to have multiple Discovery Servers. Now, this is particularly helpful if you want to divide your NDI installs. Instead of doing it on the network side, divide it by Discovery Servers. Okay, so here's something that you can do. You can run everything on the same 22255, WAC24 subnet. Everybody gets the same IP issues. You can run up DHCP reservation lists. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. You can do all of that. And then you can break it up with Discovery Servers. And you can tell a group of devices that are in a lecture room or in a classroom, or maybe they're in your church auditorium, but you have other sources elsewhere. You can tell them to all talk to a single Discovery Server. And then the other rooms that have NDI in them, you can tell them to talk to different Discovery Servers at different IP addresses. And you can break it all up via Discovery Server, but they would all be on a flat subnet, on a WAC24 subnet. In here, you can add multiple Discovery Servers by just separating them by commas, okay? So it even tells you how to do that, right? If I click off of, where are we here? If I click off of this, it says, look, comma separated, and it shows you how to do it, okay? It shows you that you can separate different Discovery Servers by just using a comma. Pretty cool. So this computer, if this is my main switching machine, I need to have access to all of the NDI sources or a set of NDI sources. We're going to be doing lectures in multiple rooms or simultaneous or whatever you're doing. You can put them in here in Access Manager and do simultaneous multiple Discovery Servers. Now, one day, you will be able to do Discovery Server redundancy, which means that you could put in multiple Discovery Servers into a BirdDog device, and it would report to both. And so if one Discovery Server fails, the other one keeps going. Now, when this launched, I thought that this was already in the SDK for NDI. I messed up. I thought this was already done. It is not. So BirdDog devices can only report to one Discovery Server as of today, confirmed. Okay, I've asked the engineers, and they told me that that's the truth. One day, though, the plan is to have, I don't know when that day is, by the way, is to have redundancy built in so that you can put multiple Discovery Servers in a single BirdDog camera or a BirdDog decoder, and it will report to both or to all of them. And so if one Discovery Server shuts down, just like my friend in Stockholm had asked earlier today, if one of them shuts down, the system keeps going. But that's not done yet. It will be. That is the plan. That's the hope and dream. That's the feature request. It's just not there yet. Access Manager, though, already has that built in. And so we could use Discovery Server instead of doing groups or instead of doing VLANs or instead of doing subnets, we could use Discovery Server in that manner. And we could deploy it over multiple Discovery Servers and run those on multiple computers across, several rooms or lecture rooms or hotel conference rooms or whatever it is that you're doing. So really cool, really fun idea that you could use Discovery Server for there. The other thing I should mention is Discovery Server is great in all installations. And I actually think Discovery Server was designed to be installed when you install NDI on your network. That was the point. But the way that we were doing business back then, we didn't really talk about it. And whoops-a-daisy, we should have been. Because Discovery Server is really cool. If you run Discovery Server, it will, and you point your devices at it, it will keep those sources and in an active list. And then when you go to find that list, it doesn't have any broadcasts happening on the network. Discovery Server just has that active list, and your decoder can say, hey, give me the list, Discovery Server, and it gives you a complete list of all active sources on your network. It's really clean. It cuts down on some of the network traffic. It provides a way for you to verify that sources are working. And if a device doesn't know about the Discovery Server, so if I take a laptop, I'm a rogue guy, and I come to your installation, I plug into your NDI network, I can't see all your sources. I have to know where your Discovery Server is, and I have to join it in Access Manager in order for me to see all of your NDI sources. So it's kind of a security thing. It's like level 1 security. Stop the broadcasts, send them all to Discovery Server, and that way even some Joe Schmo who doesn't know what he's doing can't install Studio Monitor and see all of my cameras. So there you go. That one's for free, folks. Next is let's go to NDI device analysis. Alias, I'm sorry. This is if I don't want my devices on my computer where NDI Tools is installed, if I don't want them to be called the computer name, which is vMix Machine, okay, if I want them to be called something else, I can change it here. And this will change the MDNS broadcasts out of my computer to be whatever it is that I want. So if I want to call this like Studio 2901 vMix, I could put it in like this. Oh, actually, that's vMix, right, guys? Okay, so like this. And I hit OK. It's going to change in the libraries what it is that I'm broadcasting. And then in Studio Monitor, that's the way it's going to appear. Studio 2901 vMix. Because maybe what you did is you went over to my boy, the goat of the NDI world, Tom Sinclair, and you ordered 6 vMix machines from him. And they're all called the same thing, like vMix Studio or vMix Machine or whatever. And you said, look, I want 6 identical vMix machines. I got all these students. I want to teach them how to produce, but I just want 6 of the same. And he's like, gladly, I'll make you all of those. He pumps those out for you. He ships them over to you. You plug them in. Well, they're all called the same thing. The computer names are all the same. The MAC addresses are different, but the computers are all called the same thing. Well, you have, production suite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, we can just change this to like prod 1. And now all NDI sources that are generated on that first vMix machine will be called prod 1 instead of, vMix machine and get kind of all jumbled and confused. So you can change the NDI device alias name, NDI sources that are being generated on your computer where NDI Tools is installed. You can change it there in Access Manager, and we'll change the name for the MDNS function. So when you look at it in Studio Monitor, the name is different. All right, the last little one is preferred NIC. This one, I genuinely believe I don't understand. I think it works. I just don't know how yet. The idea is that if you have multiple NIC cards, NDI, and I'll insult your intelligence here and read this to you, but NDI makes effective use of available network connections for best transmission. Use this option to force NDI traffic to prefer a specific network whenever possible. Here's the thing. I have tested this, and I cannot get it to work. I don't know why. Because the little icon here tells me exactly what I want to know. Here's the deal. I have a vMix machine that has like a dual NICs. And I've got one connection that goes to my NDI network, and I've got one connection that goes to my internet at like a hotel. So I roll up, I set up my cameras, I plug in my 4250, I plug in my cameras, they power on, I plug in my vMix machine, we all get the same subnet range. And then I take the internet from the hotel, which is terrible, it's like 10 megs up. And I plug it into my vMix machine, my other NIC card, or my other NIC on the computer. What generally happens is that NDI generates on the NIC that has the active traffic, the internet and a few things, and it's really bad on Macs. But on a PC, generally, it gravitates as default towards that active network because it can get out to the internet, whatever. And if I have a closed network, like an NDI network that doesn't have that, that one is seen as the secondary network. Well, so you would think then, you'd go over here and you'd say, hey, Ethernet 2 is my NDI network, and Ethernet just straight is my internet network. So I'm going to select Ethernet 2, and now my NDI libraries know that that is my NDI network, and that is the one that should be forced to be used. I cannot get this thing to work. It always goes out the internet network. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I genuinely believe that it does work. I just don't know how to fix it. because when I do this, it doesn't matter. It still load balances. It still tries to like go out the internet one when I'm using a closed network. So I can't get this feature to work, but it is highly desired. I'll put it that way, because if it did work, this would solve a lot of problems, even tickets that I have open today. I've got one guy that's using Wirecast, and his BirdDog device cannot see his Wirecast output, but it can see a test patterns output. And he looks at the Wirecast output, it shows up in Studio Monitor, but he looks at the test pattern, it shows up in Studio Monitor, but he can't get Wirecast to show up on the Mini. And what I think is happening is Wirecast is outputting to the network on his internet side and not on his NDI side. And I don't think that there's a way to force Wirecast to do it, and I know that that feature doesn't really work yet. At least I haven't been able to get it to work. And so I don't know what the deal is there, but if anybody from NDI or New Tech is watching, by all means, tell me what I am doing wrong. Charlie says, hi from Kenya. What's going on, Charlie? Wow, that's a long way away, my friend. Thank you for coming by and saying hi. I appreciate that. Always a pleasure to have folks check in from around the world. Kenya is a long way from here. Computers prefer the NIC set to be the default gateway. I have no rebuttal for that. I have only made the preferred network work and then running it with Discovery servers, run those on some Linux servers. Oh, nice. That's a good idea. I should test that. You know what? I don't have to test it. Sounds like mystery Facebook user, also known as Roan. Oh, what's going on, Roan? Thanks for checking in. That's a great idea. Hey, be mindful of public versus private network settings in the NIC. Windows will not allow MDNS on networks that are marked public. Roan from Denmark. Hey, cheers, Roan. Thanks for checking in. Oh, Denmark is also a long way away. Good stuff. That's so cool. So cool that you guys check in from all over the place. I should mention this, too, as a round out to Snacks on Stream. There is no burn left. Spicy salsa was delicious and gone. These were not... I don't know what the fire is on this. Like, I don't know. It's not fire. Anyways, they're delicious though. I'm not gonna not eat them. Okay, so yeah, I can't figure out what it is that I'm doing wrong, but I cannot get the preferred NIC thing to just put NDI in that single network, right? Now, here's something cool that I should say about connecting networks to a machine. If you have an option like me where I've got two connections that go to the same switch, all right? I've got two fiber ports essentially that come over Thunderbolt. Two fiber connections that go to a 4250 and they go into the 1 gig port on the 4250. If you just plug them in straight and let them both get IP addresses from the same subnet, NDI will load balance on each NIC connection. It does this natively. And I think I said this last week. I think this is such a cool idea. Because in theory, you could buy a card that has 4 fiber ports and plug them all into multiple switches. Like if I had two 4250s or if I had a beefy 4250 that had multiple fiber connections, you could plug in multiple connections to that switch, and then you would have a load balancing ability across all of your NDI sources. Whoever came up with that at NDI, seriously, genius. Genius. And I suspect Dr. Cross had something to do with this, but he's at Grass Valley now and no longer at NDI. And so it's a great idea. Seriously, it was a great idea. And I'm very impressed because it makes life a lot easier. Okay, so that is Access Manager. And by the way, changes that you make in Access Manager, you have to hit OK and then they take place. So if you turn on a Discovery Server function, but Access Manager is still open and you haven't clicked OK yet, the change has not been written to the NDI library, as I understand it. And so take that for what it's worth. All right. NDI Bridge. This is not BirdDog Bridge. Okay, this bridge is known as a Dante Bridge in our realm. This NDI Bridge converts all of your NDI sources to HX. And this is really cool. If you want to, for example, have an output on a BirdDog Play, but you don't need it to be full, you just need it to be lightweight and light bandwidth. You could convert a full NDI source to HX right here by selecting local. Okay, so local. And then you type in your bridge name and you hit start. And all of your sources then will have whatever your bridge name is in front of it as the HX version of it. Generates a lot of work on your computer. And if you have a lot of sources like me, there's a lot of extra CPU usage. But it's great to have the ability to make HX sources and send them lightweight as long as the latency thing doesn't bother you. But HX, this works great. I've used this in multiple instances where I needed an HX source on a BirdDog decoder, like on a play, and I need to see if something's working or not. This converts all, it does convert, but it leaves your full source and it converts one to HX. So you have both. You have the option to do both. So if you open NDI Bridge, click on local, put in your group name, which is just public, right? Yoink. And then we put in our bridge name and we hit start. And by the way, there are some encoding settings. So we can change the output to full NDI. If you want to create HX sources and change them to full NDI for some reason, you could change it to high bandwidth. You could say don't transcode it, and it just turns it into it just repeats the source. This is helpful if you are looking to, Central does this a little bit better, I think. But anyways, if you just want it to generate the source again on your network, you could do it that way. But here I use it to encode HX. You can change it to EVC, which would then force your GPU, your NVIDIA GPU, to do the encoding. Or you could say H.264, and that's CPU encode. NDI 4 compatibility mode. If you are running a mixed network where you're still back in NDI 4, you could say, I need this to be NDI 4. And then this is the variable bit rate when it comes to HX. So this is HX3 and HX2, kind of, I think, in the same combination. I think HX2 is the low, and then I think 3 is mid, high, and ultra, but I'm guessing at that. I don't officially know from the company. But that is what what HX3 is a variable bit rate where you can change the latency and the bit rate accordingly. So if we have lower latency, we have higher bit rate, just like full NDI. And here it gives you a little scale as to what the deal is. Oh, that's cool. You can even manually change it. Oh, that's fun. I didn't even know that was a possibility. So I just say low because I don't want it to be taxing on my network. And then you hit start, and it literally locks the screen and gives you a stop button. But you should see it actively doing it. And now all of your NDI sources or your HX sources are now being generated on your computer. So the computer has to be on in order for those sources to be generated. You can also use this program to do basic NDI transport across the internet. And so this is what Bridge is, where you can say, okay, I want this computer to be the host, and you set up the bridge name. You give the public IP address, which is usually autofilled, but if you have multiple IP addresses or you have firewalls, you're going to have to do that manually. You want to set an encryption key and keep that to yourself, and then resolve the port and the public IP address for you. You can manually set it this way by unchecking that and changing these if you'd like. But if you want Bridge to do it yourself, when you hit start, this becomes the host. And then you can use this on other machines, right? You can use this on other machines to join that network. So we say join. We put in the same information that we had here. So write this stuff down or copy it or email it to yourself or whatever. And then join, and we want to put in server IP address. So that's the host's IP address. We want to put in the server port number that you're using, which gets autofilled unless you change it. And then your encryption key, which you set on the host side. Once you hit join, that connection should be made, and as I understand it, directly from external IP to external IP. Okay, it doesn't go through like an AWAS server or something like that. It's just a function here. And this will bring over the NDI video source to your network, to your host. Great. People say, well, why would I pay for BirdDog Cloud? Because cloud, you get metadata, you get control, you get all the Cloud Connect features, you get lower latency, you get faster response time, you get a bunch of stuff. Okay, so there's a reason why we do it the way that we do it. But if you just want to send a remote source, you have a camera set up on a tripod somewhere, you just need to see that NDI source, and somebody over there is going to control it. Boom. This is how you do it. This program's free. There you go. Okay, so that's Bridge. Okay. I'm not going to talk about Audio Direct, and I know a lot of people want me to. but I'm not going to talk about Audio Direct, mostly because this is for a specific function for VST3 plugins, and I don't have enough experience about that to talk about that confidently, but I will bring somebody on the show maybe that can. Okay. NDI Remote. So the whole point of this is to share or receive NDI sources over the web. And so I haven't played with this very much. I don't really, because again, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be using cloud because I have subscriptions to that. Excuse me. But you can invite people to send their basically their remote connections to you. So you can send invitations, invite and manage people to send you NDI sources. And then if you are getting sources, then you can follow these instructions here. It's pretty straightforward. It looks like you can, oh, that's fun. You can select the source that you want to use and then create a QR code on the video. Ooh, that's fun. Anyways, I need to play more with that because I don't have a ton of in-depth experience with this, because if I'm doing this sort of function, which this is just like I'm hosting a show, you know, like vMix Caller, hosting a show, and I need your NDI source. Send you an invitation. You could accept the invitation, and it could come back. So I think I have that might have that backwards. You could invite somebody to connect to your connection, I believe, and then the received invitation is the one that would be receiving the NDI source. Don't quote me on that. I don't quite know. Router, or as they say in Europe, router. Router is really cool, and this was a fun function that I didn't know NDI had for a very long time. But this essentially is a switcher, okay? And it outputs an NDI source right here, destination, okay? So if you were to open up Studio Monitor, my PC just fired up its... All right, so yoink, and we're going to go here to router destination 1. And what it does is it generates an NDI output, and you can add sources here. So this used to be my P200 used to be my main camera, right? Well, there are a bunch of things that you can link. You right-click, you say configure, and you drop down the camera that you want to use. And then you can even rename it, change the background color, change the text color, make it bold, make it not, whatever you want to do. And this basically allows you to switch NDI sources fast and have then the destination IP on a decoder or something like that. So if you're looking here in Studio Monitor, vMix Machine, router destination 1, right? But I could change that to like router destination 2, you know, and then that's this one here. Well, that is showing, let's change this to like main 200, I guess. I don't know. Let's make sure this is configured correctly. Main 200 camera. There it is. Okay, pulls it up. So if I switch this now, vMix Machine, router 2, look, P200, okay? So the P200 is out of destination 1. On 1, though, I'm showing PF120. And it even gives me this little preview window. Oh, and also cool little pro tip here is if you hover over this, you can actually open this source in Studio Monitor. So if I click on, it's like a little window to here. I don't know if you can see that, but anyways, I clicked on that, and I clicked on this, and now it says, oh, it's not the source, actually, it's the router destination. So I can pull up the router destination, and this is just a little proxy preview window. Can I change that? No, not at all. Little proxy preview window. Well, this is router destination 1, and as I showed you before, mains, you know, you can switch between them, and it calls it. So if you don't have the budget for vMix or Wirecast or something like that, right? But you want to, check this out now. You want to produce a show and you got 3 cameras and a keyboard. You can run router, free. Okay, it's a free service. Run router and run web NDI webcam. And what you do is you say, I have a service like StreamYard or OBS or something like that, and I need a webcam to come into that service, or Teams. Okay, you want to do a presentation in Teams. Link all your NDI sources in router and output them to destination 1. Then use webcam to convert destination 1 NDI into a webcam and port that into the program that you're using. And now you've got a video switcher, right? You can click through your sources, and it will switch them for you on the NDI source. And that way, you can kind of produce a small show without needing to pay a bunch of money for a real video switcher, which takes time to set up, and it has great bells and whistles. vMix has its place in the world, and I promise you it's worth it. But maybe you're not there yet, man. Maybe you just want to see, is this NDI thing really going to work for me? Boom. NDI router is going to be the answer here, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to bring in all those sources into one router, and then you can output those in a single destination, and then you can link that destination to whatever it is, wherever you want to show that information. So again, webcam input, router. You basically do your own show just with that. Now, you're not going to have the bells and whistles with the comments and the, and the sound effects and all that stuff that I have going on here. That's another show. If you just want to see if NDI can help you make better presentations on Teams, you have if you buy the cameras, the sources, you get everything else for free in NDI Tools. Boom, done. So cool stuff, really useful. I think router is one of one of those unsung heroes in the world, because it's free and it enables you to basically produce a small show. I'm just thinking, if you're doing like basketball, for high schools, set up your cameras, bring them back to a PC, fire up router, fire up, the webcam app, and ship that stuff out to YouTube or something. I don't know. Like OBS is free. You use OBS if you want, or whatever. There's lots of options. Okay, excuse me. Hopefully that cough was muted. All right, there's a couple other things in here. NDI for After Effects. I actually don't have After Effects, and I don't have that plugin installed. So we have done work with Jake on some of that, and I'll have him back in. And same thing with Premiere Pro. I'm a Resolve guy, so there you go. And then NDI for VLC. I am using NDI for VLC. You run this little plugin, and it will open VLC, and it will enable you. And I should show you where this is, by the way. Let's get rid of this. Remove. Okay. Here is a little behind the scenes. Yes, you just saw a glitch in the Matrix. Here's a little behind the scenes of my playlist that runs for my music that I play pre and post show. Okay. It's running out of VLC, and VLC is generating an NDI audio output. Where you change this is we can go over to, where is it here? Tools, Preferences. And when you click on that little button in NDI Tools, it'll open VLC. And then when you go to the Preferences option, it will open this little window, right? And in here, we click on Audio, Output Module, and down near the bottom, it will say NDI Audio Output. So we select that, and we can change it to Video Output, NDI Video Output. Okay, change it to that. Hit Save, close VLC, reopen VLC, and then check out Studio Monitor. Inside Studio Monitor, open this up. We go vMix Machine, because that's my program. Look, VLC output. And there is no video here, okay? But if I were to, I do have the meters in here. Strange that it's not showing the meters, because it's showing them on my screen over here. This would be my VLC video output. And let me just make sure I did that right. Yep. So that's my VLC video and audio output. And it would play music if I was listening to that actual source. Now, I have it listed as silent. Maybe that's the deal. So audio, yeah, silent mode. So if I were to go out, let's go out 1 through 4. Nope, that's not right. 1 and 2. Video, no, audio. Well, I go with the K. Oh no. Sorry. Did that wrong. Audio. Cable output. I'm trying to demonstrate this for you where it would come in here. It should be playing out the actual effects channel. Store, where are we? Sound effects. Is this working?
Good news, everyone!
Yes, it is. So, maybe I need to restart Studio Monitor. Excuse me. Restart Studio Monitor. Let's give this another go. VLC. All right. Well, for some reason, it's not actually showing this. My apologies. I'm not too sure why that is. But you can bring those NDI sources into vMix or into your as an audio channel. You know, so let's say we're doing multiple audio channels. You can bring an NDI audio purely. There is no video playing, right? There's no video playing in VLC. It's just the audio being run. Oh, and look, and it might be because this is paused. So if I play it, that might do it. Okay. So it is now definitely working. And there's the music. I don't know if you can hear that at all, but you can see the audio meters are going. So this is now an NDI audio source that is basically coming across my network as audio. So anybody could tune into this on my network and listen to the tunes. Now this playlist plays basically anytime this machine is on, with the exception of some NDI sources that I generate for other reasons, but just for testing reasons. But that NDI for VLC plugin is super useful. Now, a word of warning, my friends, and I'll wrap up with this for this segment. A word of warning. The NDI VLC output is not super stable or great. I wouldn't integrate this as a part of your regular production suite. If you want to play music over NDI, works great. I can advocate for that, okay? Works great. Seems to work very stable. I can run it for multiple hours. That's all good. I have had issues, though, playing video files. So you could play a movie, for example, that you created yourself and own the rights to, and generate an NDI stream with that video and put it on loop. I have noticed that the NDI feed freezes out of VLC after a couple of hours of showing that feed. And I use that function to show, to do testing, video testing, on some of the BirdDog videos that we have here in the office, to send them to plays and screens and flex outs and whatever. I use that VLC function. It works, just not forever. And the first time I saw this done was in 2019, when the lead engineer at BirdDog did that to generate our sign. They used VLC to generate our signage in at NAB. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I didn't really understand it until about a year and a half later, how it was that he was doing that. I just don't, the plugin seems to work great. I think that there's an issue with VLC and the video element of it long term. But the audio portion does not seem to be very taxing and seems to work pretty well. I just don't, I have a hard time with the consistent, and maybe my computer's going to sleep and that's freezing it, or maybe there's a power issue, or maybe I'm running out of memory. I don't know what it could be. I just can't get the video portion of it to work long for days on end. It works generally for a couple of hours, and then it kind of packs up. So there you go, everybody. There is a brief overview. That wasn't brief. There's an overview of the offerings of the NDI Tools Toolkit, which I think continues to get better as time goes along. If you are in the NDI realm, you need to have NDI tools on the computer that you use as a toolkit. And if you're training people to understand NDI, start with Studio Monitor and NDI Tools. Okay? That will give them a great grounding as to what's going on. Start with don't start showing them how they come into vMix right away and yada yada. Show them the basics. Here's a camera, and here's a little program we use to look at what the camera's generating. Okay, now we're going to take that source and input it into our switcher, and then you can build on that. But if you're not using Studio Monitor or NDI Tools in your NDI workflow, I strongly recommend you consider it, because it's a great set of tools, and also it's a really powerful set of tools. So, yeah, good stuff.